Let's go ahead and bring in Steiner Sports CEO, Brandon Steiner.
One of the country's top memorabilia mogul.
I have an unbelievable guest, Brandon Steiner.
Brandon's second to none.
Michael, after 3 hours at a Yankee game,
It was great.
I feel like my life has changed. There's no question. I mean, some of the intel and information. First of all, how do you come about sleep? I mean, how do you come up with this? I mean, I just never met a sleep doctor, but it sounds so random, but it sounds so important.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So I have a Ph.D. in clinical psychology, and I'm board certified in clinical sleep disorders. So I took the medical specialty board without going to medical school and passed. I'm one of 168 people in the world that's ever done something like that. So I get good sleep, so I can study well for these tests, for sure.
And you'll tell you something. We were in Arizona last week at the McKay Roundtable, and that's where I met you.
Correct.
So we're only like a week into this relationship, but I'm like, I got to become this guy's best friend because I didn't see you coming.
Right.
You know, it was a Sunday night. We usually have a little dinner. We're hanging out. We don't always have a speaker on a Sunday night. And all of a sudden, I'm like, who is this guy?
Yep.
And I've been feeling like rest and sleep is important. Why is rest and sleep so important?
So it turns out that, you know, when you look at the idea of wellness, which is a big popular topic these days, people are always talking about diet and exercise, right? I can show you data that if you're not sleeping well, none of that matters. Absolutely none of that matters. And so when we start to look at sleep as a rejuvenative activity, right, this is where we recharge our batteries. Believe it or not, we don't even know all of the reasons why we sleep. But what we do know is that several different things happen when we do sleep, right? So, and by the way, sleep as an amount is different for different people. I think that was one of the things that you told me that you thought was most interesting is 8 hours is a myth, right?
Really?
8 hours is a myth.
What is the right number?
It's different for different people. So as an example, I've been a 6.5 hour sleeper my entire adult life. I'm the sleep doctor, right? And I sleep 6.5 hours a night. And people are like, because that's all my body needs. And the reason that's all my body needs is because I'm so consistent with my sleep schedule. It turns out that our body needs less and less sleep the more consistent we are, because if our brain knows exactly when to sleep, it can actually get to all of those activities much quicker. We know that in stages 3 and 4 sleep, this is the physically restorative sleep. This is the wake up and feel great
What
sleep.
happened to 1 and 2 phase? I mean, how many phases are there of sleep?
So there's actually 5. So there's 5 stages, 1 through 4, and then something called REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement, where your eyes move back and forth, and that's your dreaming sleep. Stages 1 and 2 really are more transitional. 1 for sure, very short, maybe 5% of the night. Believe it or not, 50% of the night you spend in stage 2. 50%. But there's not a lot of stuff that we've learned yet that we get from that. There's a couple things, a little bit here, a little bit there, but stage 3 and 4 is really where the money is at. And that happens in the beginning of the night too. This is where growth hormone is emitted, and that's when you get all the cellular repair. So if you're working out, like you were playing basketball yesterday, right? You told me you were playing basketball.
Shooting the lights out, by the way.
There you go.
Going, yeah.
And so how your body can recover so well from that is because of stage 3, 4 sleep, right? The other big stage of sleep that's really important is REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. This is what most people know as dream sleep. Why is this so important? It turns out that this is where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. We create this organizational substructure in our head for information that makes it easy to retrieve. And each piece of information is linked to another piece inside our brain, and that linking process, we think, is dreaming. So you can't remember anything if you're not getting into REM sleep. And the only way to get there is to go through the other stages. It's actually a very specific dance move, if you will.
So if you sleep only 3-4 hours, you may not get there?
Exactly.
And that's why you're not really at your best when you get that short amount of sleep.
Exactly.
Really?
Right. You'll get some of the physical restoration, but you won't get that mental restoration like you see from REM.
You're only fooling yourself if you only get 3-4 hours of sleep. You may think you're okay, but you're really not.
Well, you're definitely not okay. And there's a lot of data to show that anybody who's sleeping less than 5 hours a night on a regular basis has a double mortality rate. Double.
Wow.
Right?
And there's a lot of people that think they get away with that.
Exactly. And you don't. You just can't get away with that kind of level of sleep deprivation. But remember, sleep deprivation isn't only about minutes, it's also about quality, right? And so, for example, if you're drinking coffee at 8 o'clock at night and you're wondering why you're not getting great sleep, the caffeine is probably preventing you from getting into those deeper stages of sleep. So you could get 8 hours, but if you drank a cup of coffee at the end of dinner, you're really probably only getting 5 or 6. Right? So thinking through some of those, same thing with alcohol. There's a really big difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? And a lot of people, alcohol is the #1 sleep aid in the world. More people use alcohol to help them fall asleep if they have insomnia or restlessness or things like that. And it's terrible.
You don't recommend it?
I don't, but I'm also not a teetotaler. I don't have a problem. You want to have a couple of beers, glass of wine, even some spirits with dinner, that's fine.
Yeah.
But give yourself the time. It takes the average human body approximately 1 hour to digest one alcoholic beverage. So here's one of my rules for people is I say, look, stop drinking 3 hours before lights out. Right? This will give you enough time for your body to metabolize through the alcohol. You'll still enjoy your meal, enjoy the beverage, and it doesn't have an effect on your sleep.
So you're actually a sleep doctor. People are actually able to, they come in and visit you when they're struggling to sleep. If you have a question, by the way, from Michael Breus is here, sleep doctor. Definitely, please participate in. We want to hear from you.
Absolutely.
We're going to take your questions. And so you're people that actually have sleep problems can actually go to a doctor like you.
Absolutely.
How many people do you think have sleep problems like in this country? Do
Oh
you have
my
a random
gosh.
number, or
Oh,
is it
no.
like 1 out of 3? Is it?
So it's pretty interesting. And if you break it down just by disorder, like just looking at sleep apnea, and for folks out there who may or may not know what sleep apnea is, this is a situation where many people snore, but that's not quite sleep apnea. It's where your throat closes in the middle of the night. You stop breathing in your sleep. Generally speaking, we like our patients to breathe, right? We want that to happen. It's good, right? We like that. And that really is, and people don't realize it, but they stop breathing in their sleep and they wake up, and then they go back to sleep and they wake up again. This is very disruptive to the sleep process, and it what's called fragments your sleep. It gives you really light, crappy sleep, and that's why you wake up feeling exhausted. Plus, when you don't get oxygen to the brain, it can cause brain damage over the course of time.
And you could die from sleep apnea.
Absolutely.
That's what people don't realize. You could eventually at some point die.
Well, look at Reggie White, right? I mean, look at some of the greatest, people that we know. I mean, there's a lot of people who've died in their sleep. Guess what? They died from sleep apnea and secondary complications. So when we think about sleep and we think about the stages of sleep and how much or how do we get that sleep, I've developed a little routine. I'd like to share it with your audience, teach people how to figure out how much sleep they need, right?
Okay.
So we know, I call it the bedtime calculator. Right, and so we know that most people wake up at the same time every day. Right, in my house, I wake up at 6:30 because it's the time I got to get my kids up, get ready for school, that kind of thing. Right, so we know the average sleep cycle is 90 minutes long, and the average person has 5 of those sleep cycles. So 5 times 90 is 450 minutes. Right, divided by 60 is 7.5 hours. So right there, we know the math.
You're a little sleep deprived, or no?
Oh well, so let me tell you the story. So in theory, I should be, right? Because I'm getting 6.5, and I'm talking about the average is 7.5, right? So here's what I did was I started at 6:30. I count backwards, 7.5 hours, which puts me at 11 o'clock. So now I know what my bedtime should be. I mean, let's be honest. When was the last time somebody told you to go to bed? You were like 8, right? 9 years old. Your mom said, hey, get to bed, right? You don't think about it. Because here's what happens invariably. My patients tell me, say, oh, I was going to go to bed at 10, and I started watching Game of Thrones, and holy cow, it was midnight. Right? Happens all the time.
All the time.
Right? So now you have a bedtime. So I did this experiment on myself. And I got to be honest with everybody out there, it failed miserably. I went to bed at 11. I woke up at 5:30.
You know that you're 6.5 hours, that's it.
Right. Did it again, woke up at 5:30. Said, holy cow, I go to bed at midnight. Now I wake up at 6:30. So I go to bed at midnight. I wake up at 6:30 every night, Saturday, Sunday, you name it.
Well, that's a mistake if you vary.
Exactly. Consistency is the most important aspect of sleep. If I could tell people one thing that they do, one thing to make your sleep better tonight is wake up at the same time every day, including the weekends, right?
Don't sleep in.
Do not sleep in.
Don't sleep in.
Don't
I
sleep
think sleeping
in.
in is for losers, by the way. I just want to put it out there. I mean, really? Like, life is that exhausting that you got to go sleep 13 hours? I mean,
Right.
I'm just not big on that. But some people tell me that, I slept. I'm like,
Well, and here's what happens, right, is you stay up late on Friday, sleep in on Saturday. Stay up late on Saturday, sleep in on Sunday. What do you think your body wants to do on Sunday night? Stay up late, and Monday morning is terrible. Why? Because your brain doesn't know what to do. Literally, 1 or 2 days of sleeping in completely throws your circadian rhythm off.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
I see companies get off to really slow starts on Monday mornings because of this.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about a hot topic.
Yes.
I came back to the office and brought this to everyone's attention.
Right.
74% of the people in this country have sex at between 10:30 and 11 at night.
That is correct.
Take me through that and tell me why that's such a bad idea.
So I just wrote a new book.
Is that a bad idea?
It is a bad idea.
How bad?
It's pretty bad.
Stupid.
It's pretty stupid if you really want it. If
So
you look
you're
at
having
it.
sex between 10:30 and 11, which is basically 3/4 of the country.
Exactly.
You're stupid.
Right. So let me tell you why that's not such a great idea.
Okay.
Right. So, and I wouldn't say, I don't know if I'd use the word stupid. Here's what I would say is uneducated.
Okay.
So let's educate everybody today and get them there. So here's what we know. 74% of people have sex between 10:30 and 11:30 at night. Your hormone profile, what your body needs in order to have sex, is you need estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, adrenaline and cortisol to be high, and you need melatonin, the sleep hormone, to be low, right? You don't want to be sleepy during sex, you want to have energy, right? That's kind of the basics here. So I'll tell you what your hormone profile looks like at 10:30 at night. It's the opposite. Melatonin is high, and all 5 of those hormones are low. Fact. In everybody. Okay. However, at 8:30 in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning, when you wake up, guess what? In order to bring your body out of a state of unconsciousness, all of those hormones have to be high and melatonin has to be low. So the perfect time for people to actually have sex turns out to be in the morning time.
Like first thing.
First thing. Absolutely.
Right when you wake up.
And we know this with men anyway, because many men wake up with an erection. So we already know, like, if that isn't Mother Nature telling us, hey, this is the time to do that, I'm really not sure what is.
All right, memo out there. And I'll tell you a great tip I learned from John Gray, which is for women that want to have more sex.
Yep.
Let your man
watch the game.
Watch the games.
Absolutely.
And why?
Because it increases his testosterone levels.
Through the roof.
Absolutely. He's yelling at the team. He's doing.
And most women are like, oh, you're watching that game again. No, watch the game.
Right.
You know, go get, yeah.
Exactly.
And I see a lot more women watching the game with their husbands.
Oh, yeah.
That's got to lead to probably more sex.
Absolutely. There's no
question.
question.
If you have a question, by the way, we're going to rattle off, Ben, any questions for Michael Breus, the sleep doctor. Thanks so much for coming up. I'm so glad you did. And what a blessing, because I think sometimes people just underestimate sleep. It's kind of the last thing you think about. You know, you plan your meals,
right.
You plan what you're going to eat, what you're going to wear, but you don't really plan your sleep enough. And it's such an important aspect of your game.
Yeah, it is. And it's not just the individual game either. It's the team game, right? And so when you go to work and you got people there that are sleep deprived, they're not doing their jobs, right? They're not doing their jobs to their potential, not even coming close. I now have companies that call me up. So my book,
airlines,
airlines,
Uber drivers,
anybody that, so honestly, any field, but certainly in the fields where you're moving large pieces of equipment. Right, so trucking, transportation, all of those, you got to be alert, you got to be on it, you got to know what's going on.
I'm asking like my Uber driver, like, what time did you go to bed last night?
Exactly.
Before I get in this car.
Well, you know what? It would be kind of nice to know, because some of those guys and gals don't look so.
On the plane too.
Right. Exactly.
People don't realize, like, you're checking for the blood alcohol and all that.
Right.
I want to know how much sleep you got the last couple of days.
Exactly.
A friend of mine who flies for UPS told me that one of the planes that crashed overseas, they did a check on one of their pilots' phones. And she had been texting,
right,
like almost 24/7 for the 3 days before, almost to the point she couldn't have got more than 3-4 hours sleep.
Exactly.
And you wonder, you get into a dramatically difficult situation.
Right.
How mentally strong, focused are you when
you're not? You're not.
You're probably not.
You're not. You're definitely not at the top of your game.
And I think people underestimate that with their employees. Like, can you now? Is that a big thing? Do you go into companies and speak and try to educate them about the importance of sleep?
I do, and I actually have a fully deployable HR program for people. So you know how some HR companies, they do stuff on weight loss, they do stuff on smoking cessation. They should be doing stuff on sleep. And so I've got a program. I go into companies and we chronotype them. So chronotyping, for people out there who might not know what that is, that's where we determine, are people early birds, are they night owls? What's their genetic propensity for sleep? Once we know that, we can actually predict throughout their entire day, their times that they're most alert, times that they're most creative. I can predict the times that they will be able to send emails more effectively, buy better, sell better. All of those things are based on our hormonal distribution or our hormone profile, which changes throughout the day. But once we know and we keep the wake-up time and the bedtime stagnant, just really strict, everything else comes into play. I got over 300 studies in this book. I can tell you the best time to have sex, eat a cheeseburger, ask your boss for a raise, you name it.
Asking your boss for a raise, that's a biggie.
You want to? I can tell you all about that one.
What's the name of the book, by the way?
The book is called The Power of When, W-H-E-N.
Ben, we got to order that book. I love that. I guess, back to the sex just for one more second.
Absolutely.
I guess you think about marital sex. People talk about that getting boring or slowing down. Could that be because people are, having sex at the wrong time and you're not as energized and as enthusiastic about it as you should be?
I would argue yes. And here's the thing. It's no longer not tonight I have a headache. It's not tonight I'm exhausted. right? And so people aren't getting good sleep. It definitely affects libido, and their hormones aren't even ready when they should be, if you will. So again, it makes a lot more sense. And I'm not saying have sex every morning, and I'm not saying that's the only time that you can have sex, but give it a try.
Why not?
You might be really pleasantly surprised. In the data that I've seen, we see people feel more connected to their partner when they're having sex in the morning, and they have more desire for their partner when they're having sex.
That's another reason for a lot of inter-office, fooling around.
So
Could that be another deterrent?
Well, think about it, right? Your hormones are there. Everything is kind of happening. You walk into work, and all of a sudden, your brain is kind of where that would be. So I think there's certainly a possibility that could be something. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to promote, any of that. But just as an issue,
you see a tendency of a lot of inter-office, fooling
Absolutely.
around. You wonder if that's kind of underneath that all.
Yeah, and so what's really interesting is when I chronotype people, and let's say I've got an early bird and a night owl that are married, when do they have sex? Becomes a big issue. So in the book, I actually created a matrix where you put in your chronotype, you put in your partner's chronotype, and we've got gay, lesbian, and heterosexual couples, and people can figure out, and it's only a 3-page chapter, so it's pretty easy to figure out.
When to ask your boss for a raise? Go back to that. I don't
You
want
bet.
to slip over that because I know a lot of people watching and listening are always
Absolutely.
interested in how they can make more money.
Yes. So this is actually really interesting scientific study. So what they did was they looked at happiness across a week. I'll give you one guess. What's the happiest day of the week?
Friday?
Exactly, right? So everybody likes Friday,
pathetic.
right? Then what they discovered is that as you get closer to quitting time, people get happier and happier and happier. Okay, so after lunch on Friday turns out to be prime time to be asking anybody for anything. Whether you're a boss and you're asking your employees to do stuff, or you're an employee and you're asking a boss for a raise, Friday afternoons is definitely the place that you want to kind of zoom in on. So let's say...
ask your boss for a raise on a Friday afternoon?
And here it gets better, all right? So you got to know your boss, right? And so what if your boss is an early bird, middle of the road, or a night owl? How do you figure that out? I'll tell you. Here's what happens. If you get emails from your boss before you even show up at work, he's an early bird, right? If you get him, if your boss shows up regular on time when you do, he's kind of middle of the road, what I call a bear. And then if you get them where he can't come in for work early, he's always struggling to get into early morning meetings, he's a night owl, or what I call a wolf, right? So then you stagger your time. So if your boss is an early bird, then right after lunch, make sure his belly is full, because nobody wants to give anybody money when they have an empty stomach.
Low sugar level.
Exactly, right? So right after lunch, walk in at 1 o'clock. Hey, I got something I want to talk with you about, because also you've got to be primed and ready. You've got to be able to present yourself in the best way that you can, and you want to have that level of energy as well. So catching them at the good time is important, but also making sure that you've got all of that good stuff inside you to be able to make your case is going to be important. If they're average, right at 2 o'clock. If they're a night person, right at 3 o'clock, and you're in.
I cannot believe the nuggets here. Ben, any questions? I mean, how great is I got to tell you, this is phenomenal insight.
Yes, somebody asked about melatonin. Do you agree with the use of sprays or pills or not?
So this is a great question looking at melatonin. So I mentioned melatonin before. Remember, melatonin is a hormone, right? And so you wouldn't walk down to the local health food store and buy testosterone, or estrogen. Although people do, it's dangerous, right? So number one is you got to be careful because it's a hormone. Number two, very few people have a melatonin deficiency unless they're age 50 or above. So I do recommend melatonin supplementation in people who are 50 or above. However, 95% of the melatonin that's sold now is sold in an overdosage format. The appropriate dose is between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams, okay? So look for the right dose, because when you take too much, you have nightmares. It can interact with blood pressure medication. It can be a mess.
What will melatonin do for you, though, if taken in the right dosage?
If taken at the right dosage and at the right time, which, by the way, is 60 minutes before bed, okay, because it takes a while for it to reach plasma concentration levels to work, it actually changes your internal biological clock. Melatonin is not a sleep initiator like Ambien or a sleeping pill would be. It's a sleep regulator. It takes your internal clock and tells your internal clock it's time for bed. Now, I will say there's one group of people that melatonin works very, very well in at higher dosages, and that's for kids who are on the autism spectrum. Right, we don't know exactly why, but 3 and 4 milligram dosages in those children actually do really, really well, because those kids have a very difficult time sleeping. So I'm not saying it's a great thing that everybody needs it. It works well for jet lag. If you're over 50, if you have a kid who's autistic or in the spectrum, those are situations where it makes a lot of sense.
Cool.
What are some foods to avoid when trying to get the right sleep?
So when you're looking at food, and this is actually a really interesting question because this is a question I get quite often. First of all, many people call me up and they say, Dr. Breus, I wake up every morning at 2:35, at 3:37. It's always somewhere in that 2 to 3 o'clock range, right? My very first question to them is, what did you eat, or when did you eat last?
So that will affect you.
Most people stop, they have their dinner, let's say it's over by 7, 8 o'clock, right? Let's say 7 o'clock just to make the math simple, right? 3 o'clock in the morning is 8 hours later. Your body's been fasting for 8 hours. Of course, there's no more fuel left. And so your brain wakes up to say, I got to go find fuel. And that's one of the reasons why people wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
I do. I wake up 3 o'clock in the morning starving.
Right.
It's interesting. And sometimes because I've worked out hard that day.
Exactly.
My body's wants more food.
Right. There's no fuel in the tank. Here's an easy fix for people is a teaspoon of raw honey. Raw honey. So local raw honey, just a teaspoon. You don't need a tablespoon. It actually keeps your blood sugar. It's very hard for your body to metabolize through it, and actually will keep your blood sugar at the right level longer and keep you asleep longer. So honey is a good thing that you can have before bed. You want to avoid, obviously, anything with caffeine within a good 3 to 5 hours before bedtime. I mean, remember, caffeine has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours. So I'm telling people to stop caffeine about 2 p.m. really is kind of the best way to do it. So avoid, because some people are caffeine sensitive, so it can last even a little bit longer. I also tell people you don't want to have a big meal right before bed, but you certainly don't want to go to bed hungry. Maybe about 200, 250 calories is a good thing. I actually just found a snack that was designed for snacking right before bed. It's called Night Food. NIGHTFOOD.
What's that?
It's a bar that was made that specifically helps curb cravings at night, and is got enough good stuff in it so that it's not causing high fat and high calories.
Picking it up online or in the store?
Yeah, you can get it online. It's nightfood.com.
Ben, a couple more.
What are some recommendations for when you wake up, food-wise?
So the biggest question I get asked, well, there's two of them. One is, how do I turn off my brain? And the other one is, what do I do when I wake up at night? So remember that raw honey can actually be very, very helpful if you wake up at night. But here's a couple of tips for folks if you wake up at night. Do not look at the clock, all right? Because here's what happens. People instantly do the mental math. And they say,
do it all the time.
They say, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I got to get up at 6. Oh, this sucks. Sleep, sleep, sleep. And they try really hard to sleep. Sleep is a lot like love. The less you look for it, the more it shows up, right? And so if you're trying to sleep, it's very, very difficult to be able to do that. But if you can relax, you don't have that pressure of that, oh my gosh, I've only got 3 hours left. I got to try and sleep. That's good. So number one, don't look at the clock. Number two, if you don't actually have to pee, don't. I'm not saying don't go to the bathroom, but a lot of people say, well, I woke up, I might as well get up. When you go from a recumbent or a horizontal position to sitting and then to standing, your heart rate increases. Most people don't know this, but you have to have a heart rate of 60 or below to enter into a state of unconsciousness, right? So when you sit up and stand up, your heart rate's well above 60. You go to the bathroom, then a lot of people will flip on the light to see which way they're going. Well, they just turn on the light and told their brain it's morning, because the brain doesn't know the difference between light in your bathroom and sunlight. It thinks it's morning time, and now you're really in trouble. So a couple of strategically placed night lights along the way.
A lot of older people are struggling with their overall sleep, because they're confusing their mindset and they're confusing their body.
Exactly. So what I do is I have people put a couple of night lights along the way to go to the bathroom in case they do. But if you don't have to go, lie back and relax. The easiest way to lower your heart rate is through deep breathing. And there's a method that I use. It was actually developed for the Navy SEALs. It's called the 4-6-7 method. So you breathe in for a count of 4, you hold it for 6 seconds, and then you breathe out for a count of 7. Right? And what it does is it empties any extra carbon dioxide out of your lungs, but it really slows your heart rate down and gets you right into that groove of below 60, and it makes it much easier to fall asleep.
Wow, this is amazing tips. I mean, especially when you think about how these little things can affect the big picture.
No question.
With your effectiveness and how winning. And I think that since I've started sleeping, I go to sleep at the same time.
Love it.
Pretty much. And the same amount of time. But I got to work on it. If I do wake up in the middle of the night stuff, because I tend to drink a lot of water and I want to wake up, but I got to work on not turning the light on, not looking at the clock, those kind of things.
Right, absolutely.
Just want to keep that
the little
consistent.
things really will make a big difference.
Your book, pick it up on Amazon?
Yes, you can grab it on Amazon, or you can actually take the quiz for free on my website. It's thepowerofwhenquiz.com. sleep.com, and you can take the quiz and learn what your chronotype is right there. You get a free report, doesn't cost you a dime. You don't have to get the book. If you want to get the book, there's an opportunity then to get it from there.
Well, by the way, Ben, can you register me for his newsletter? I got to get this newsletter. Now, the newsletter, how do I register for that? Because I got to get that. So I figured this is just a drop in the bucket here on tips.
Oh, yeah. I give a lot of cool stuff.
If you want to win, you got to find the tips from anybody and everyone you can. This is a great newsletter. Where's the newsletter?
If people go to my website, thesleepdoctor.com, you can sign up right there on there and just put in your email. And I'm not going to drive you crazy. You'll get one thing a week from me. It's a blog. I tell you about my blog. If you sign up, you can also subscribe to the blog where I give all kinds of really new, interesting information. This week, it's all about ADD, ADHD, and sleep.
Oh, I need to read that.
Which a lot of people have got those issues. We did a really deep dive on that. Next, I'm going to have a blog series on diabetes and sleep and how do those interact. But they're not always so serious. Sometimes I have blogs that I talk about new research I found. Like how mushroom coffee is this new kind of coffee that's come out. It's got half the caffeine. It's got a whole bunch of antioxidants in it. So I look at supplements. I look at a whole bunch of different things. So I think people will find it interesting.
You're in the mud. You're deep into this, man.
Oh yeah, there's not much about
every
sleep.
Which way, twice on Sunday.
I know. Well, people ask me about mattresses.
That's what I love about you, man. I mean, I think we could spend the next 24 hours talking about this and never repeat
Absolutely.
the subject matter, and that's what makes you extraordinary.
Thank you.
I'm very grateful to have you up here today. And by the way, serious collector, no less.
I am. I've been collecting since I've been 13 years old. I was telling him stories yesterday at the Yankees game. It was crazy.
How great. Listen, how beautiful. Finally, some nice weather on the East Coast. Hope you're enjoying your day. Be back at Yankee Stadium again tonight, by the way. If you're there, stop by the store to say hello.
Yeah.
Mr. Breus, Dr. Breus, thank you.
Thank you, Brandon.
Appreciate you.
Oh, no, appreciate this.